Hi, I'm Paul.
And I'm Tiffany.
To some, we could be called career wizards.
And to others, sometimes we seem like therapists. However, we definitely are not.
But for you, we are the co-hosts of the Career Boosters podcast.
The first things that I've noticed, I would say, is that students will attend networking events, but stick to the wall and not do any networking. And so I would say that is a networking faux pas. And so just put your best foot forward and, do the thing, ask the questions, even if you have one planned questions to ask about how your day is. Employer partners are pretty friendly as well, and they might help you out. They know that you're nervous. So I would say is showing up and making sure that you're talking to people and asking questions. Don't just stick on the back wall where the appetizers are.
Okay, hello and welcome to the Career Boosters podcast, Season 3, Episode 23. All of our classes have been wrapped up and we are finishing off the semester with a lot of interviews, a lot of administrative catch-up. And the great thing about that, it allows us to diversify our podcast guests, not just limited to MBA students. Today, we get to talk to somebody that is a part of our careers and work integrated learning team that does something called employer and partner relations. What does that mean? Well, employers hopefully take an active part in the development of our students when it comes to both work integrated learning, experiential learning, and posting jobs for graduation, summer work, getting projects to work on, things like that. Obviously, we need somebody to help build and maintain employer relationships and partners and step out into the corporate community, talk to people, and overall just spread the word about all of the great things that we do from a career component here at the Alberta School of Business. Today, our guest is Rachel Lachman. Rachel joined us in the last 6 months or so and has done a wonderful job at going out and about and spreading the word about careers and work integrated learning and students at the Alberta School of Business. Rachel, thanks so much for joining us. And the first question we have is tell us a little bit about your role and what you do here.
Thanks, Paul. So I am the Employer and Community Partner Outreach Specialist within the School of Business CWIL team. So my role is all about cultivating meaningful relationships with employers, alumni, community partners to create opportunities for undergrad and master's students within the School of Business. I'm often the main point of contact for employers and will advise them on student engagement activities and opportunities. And we have a wonderful team that I'm always happy to refer my connections to so that they can further foster those relationships.
That's amazing. And I've been asking MBA students about what their favorite part of being in an MBA program is. So I'm going to ask you the same thing. We're a mighty 20-person team approximately. What has been your favorite part about working with careers and work integrated learning so far?
I would say that everyone on this team is such a wealth of knowledge and they're just so fun to be around. So Paul and Tiffany included. So I love chatting it up with you guys, the rare moments that I have gotten to. But I would say everyone is so welcoming, so friendly. I'm never afraid to ask any questions or ask for help. And I had to put together an event for Uniqlo a couple months back. And the way that the team just jumped right in to help with a last minute event was wonderful. So I think I enjoy the environment a lot, the team members especially, and just how everyone is willing to help each other out and be there for each other and share funny jokes on our team meetings. So I always love that from Tiffany and Paul especially.
We are a pretty great team, the larger team and the smaller teams within the teams. I mean, I've worked on many teams in my life, and this has been certainly, I think, one of the highlights of my career is the team that we have here, which is lovely. I also think we should have like every team member sort of on a mini podcast, and we should ask them that question, Paul. What do you love about, and then like stitch them all together, and we'll have like a whole promo video for CWIL. I think we should do that. So you talked about everything that you do for us. And the School of Business. So it sounds to me like you build relationships for a living. That is what you're paid to do. However, I also feel like in my interactions with you, that is just you as a person. So tell me how it is that you do build relationships, but I'm actually more curious about you as a person. Is Rachel, how does Rachel build relationships? Because then I would imagine that's how you do it in your job.
Absolutely. So, the way that I like to approach it is go into it with a long term relationship mindset rather than selling a program or selling a student. You're trying to build trust and a lasting connection. And I feel like that's where my personal touch comes in because I feel like that's who I am as a person. I'm always trying to foster the relationships that I have in my life, whether that's friends in my personal life. So I think that's where my side comes in is that I'm always trying to build that trust and maintain that connection. And that comes into learning both sides. So the student side, the faculty side, and the employer side, and understanding their needs. So for example, like employer pain points and looking at what their recruitment cycle looks like. And for students, it's more so understanding their strengths and their career readiness levels. And the reason that I am in this role is because I want to build those connections that will help students build meaningful careers for themselves.
It is so important to have somebody like you that can be that intermediary between the students and the employer partners. But I would add us as well to it. You come to, our meetings and to our office with such a great wealth of knowledge when it comes to what is happening out in industry. We can hear from it from a student's perspective, especially Tiffany and I as being coaches to students, but we don't often get to hear it from the employer side of things. And I think that allows you to be an intermediary between the employers and us as well to help prepare the students in the best possible way. My next question to you comes back to strengths around what allows you to be such a great relationship builder. So what makes you such a great relationship builder, and what is the greatest strength that you have to do this?
Yeah, so a colleague once told me that it's all about learning about people and how they work, and that everyone is different and they will use a different approach. And the same goes for employer partners. So, depending on the person and the organization, my approach is always different and the way that I connect with them will be different. So there are employers that will more so want in-person visits and always having that in-person connection like coffees and lunches and coming to visit. So they always appreciate that. And then you'll have the more busier employers that won't always want to meet in person, but they still value and respect that connection. So just making sure that your approach is different depending on who the person is and who the organization is.
You know, we do strengths. We talk about strengths a lot, but when I say strengths, I mean Clifton strengths. So Strengths Finder is something that we do a lot of as a team. And what I'm hearing is Paul smirking because he knows where I'm going with this. Rachel, I haven't been able to sit down with you yet on your strengths, but you're talking about one that you may not have heard of before in this way, but it's one that Paul talks about a lot because it's high on his list. Actually, I think it's number one for you, isn't it? And it's called individualization. And it's a type of strength where you really understand the uniqueness of others and how to tailor your approach to them, which is exactly what I heard you just say. And so I'll be really curious. I'm like maybe going to put a little bit of money, maybe fake Monopoly money, on the fact that you have individualization in your top five. I don't know. I don't think I've seen your report, but I bet it's high up there. Have
I
you?
definitely think it is
Mhm.
one of the top ones for sure. So
Mhm.
I haven't looked at it in a little bit, but
You and
I
I
think
should
so.
chat about that. I bet it's there. We'll
Yeah.
circle back. And if it is, and the way you're talking about it, you and Paul very much have that in common. Sure, you do it in your own way, but that is a big strength of both of yours for sure, which is really cool. Seeing as we're talking sort of about personality, let's kind of stretch that out to introvert, extrovert. And we often think connectors, and this is a misconception actually that Paul and I get all the time, that as connectors and, people, the assumption is that we are extroverts. And from Paul and mine's perspective, that's actually an incorrect assumption. I would call us ambiverts at best. I skew introvert. I don't know where you skew. Actually, Paul, you tell yourself being in the middle. But what about you, Rachel? Where are you on that list?
I would say I'm definitely an extrovert with a social battery. So I love talking to people. I am a yapper naturally. And so whether that's at work, in my personal life, so I'm 100% an extrovert. I can say that. But at the same time, I do feel like I have a social battery. And especially with the role that I'm in, that I'm talking to so many people that sometimes I just need to go home and unwind and unplug.
What do you have to consider knowing that you are an extrovert and you have that just natural magnetism to people and putting the energy out there? What do you have to consider though when you're interacting with others, knowing that actually more people are ambiverts or introverts, in fact?
Absolutely. And I mean, again, it's working with a variety of people and knowing who's who, right? So I think when I go into conversations within the first couple of seconds or minutes, you can tell who's the introvert and who's the extrovert. And so there are people that, will only want to talk about work. And, there are people who maybe they want to talk about work 20% of the time and they want to talk about other things as well, right? And that's how they build connections. That way is relating to something on a personal level. I had an employer at one of the companies that I visit during the Calgary Career Trek. And, they wanted to encourage students to come network with them. And they said, you don't always have to ask me about work. Ask me about my gardening. Ask me about what I've planted what I'm planning to plant this summer. And, I think that's a great way to kind of segue into more professional and work related questions for the students. So,
Yeah.
mm,
It is such a great point, and I'll be honest, I absolutely love employers that open that door to like the personal insights for students, because I think students always believe they need to be like really buttoned up, and it's like, what do you do? What kind of strategic initiatives do you solve? Things like that. It's like, oh gosh, like my favorite question to ask when I am talking to employers is, if you had the whole day free to yourself, what would you do? And to me, that is beautiful, because you're going to talk about things that are really interesting to them. And the students, when you tell them that, they're like, I can't ask them that. That's like, and I'm like, no, that's where you should start. And that's like the building of those relationships, right? So I think it's so important and so cool that employers start to do that for our students. So that's how they learn. That's how the students learn, which I think is so beautiful. So, what do you think? The next question on our list was, what do you think the biggest myth that students believe about networking? What drives you crazy about this particular myth? What do you think?
that it's hard.
Yeah.
Like in a nutshell, I would say that networking is hard. And kind of just segueing into what we were talking about is that it's just a conversation. At the end of the day, you can't do it wrong if you have a couple questions prepared. And even just that, you can ask about how the event is going. You can ask about how their day is going. And like you said, what they want to do in their free time. So I would say that put yourself out there. The more that you do it, the better you will get at it. And it is so crucial and important to your career is learning how to network.
Mm-hmm. You just mentioned that you were just helping some students learn how to network to do just that in Calgary, in a bit more of a, I would call, formal sense, in that they were there specifically to network. And so anxiety actually ends up a little bit higher on a trek like that. We're taking students into businesses. It seems kind of bigger and formal. What did you see happen with students throughout the day? The good, the bad, the neutral? How did networking go for them?
Absolutely. I mean, I was in awe. I think these students, they were up at 4 a.m. to get on that bus at 6 a.m. and they were there until 5 p.m. and they were not home until 9:30. So for me was watching the way that these students interacted at 4:30 p.m. on a Friday afternoon after they've been up since 4 a.m. So they showed up and they showed out. So they had the questions, they had the professionalism, and I was just blown away with how well they were able to perform even after getting less than enough sleep the night before.
I love the way you just phrased that. They showed up and they showed out. I'm stealing that. I'll give it back to Paul, but I love that.
And I think there's so many times that we can look at, students when they go to employer sites. We can always look at like a student did this poorly or they seem like they were going to be asleep. But I love how you took like a really positive context to that, because I think so often we can look at this is what the students didn't do, but I love that you said the students did this and they showed up in this way. And I think, Tiffany and I, we really, really believe in our students, and I think we sometimes believe that more than they believe. And it's awesome to hear that the students, both undergrad and graduate students, did a really awesome thing this last Friday, which is so cool. However, there are awkward moments throughout networking, and we've all had them. One day I'm just going to host a podcast with Tiffany and I, and we will just laugh about the things that have happened to us, because there are many of them. But what's the most awkward networking moment that you've witnessed, and what was the lesson to that?
So I have a two-parter to this, but I'll try not to take up too much time. The first things that I've noticed, I would say, is that students will attend networking events, but stick to the wall and not do any networking. And so I would say that is a networking faux pas. And so just put your best foot forward and, do the thing, ask the questions, even if you have one planned questions to ask about how your day is. And, employer partners are pretty friendly as well, and they might help you out. They know that you're nervous. So I would say is showing up and making sure that you're talking to people and asking questions. Don't just stick on the back wall where the appetizers are. So I would say that's a big one for me. And an awkward networking moment, Tiffany knows about this, actually happened with me on the Calgary career trek, where I mistook a group of employees for students, and I was basically drill sergeanting them, and they didn't say anything for like the first 5 minutes, and I'm just telling them, hey, go, like, go sit down, go find a seat, like, and the first time they said nothing, they just nodded at me, and then the second time they were like, we work here, and I was like, that's great. You guys look so young and you look just like students. So, I mistook you for students. I'm so sorry. So, like it just shows, Paul and Tiffany, that, I've been in this for a few years now, and you called me a relationship builder and someone that knows how to network. And we all make mistakes and we're all still learning.
And I remember you relaying that to me not long after it happened, as you were like just having your own moment, which we all do. We have those moments of inner, oh my God. But then you actually said something to me afterwards that even though that happened, that they still chatted with you about partnering with us. Like the world
Yes.
didn't end. Right? The y'all didn't go up in flames. Like they still want to work with us. Like you're human. We're human.
Yeah, if I can just like step in for 1 sec, we are all human.
Mm-hmm.
We were literally just joking just before I press record. I have called students the wrong name for like several meetings, and it's like, oh my gosh, how embarrassing is that? But at the end of the day, like you own it, and it's like, it is what it is, right? And you move on. We are all humans, and at the end of the day, maybe those employers or the partners that we have, maybe enjoyed being treated like a student. They're like, oh, this is nice. This brings me back to my youth and the experiences that I've had. So sorry, I just wanted to chime in, but we are all
Mm-hmm.
people and we all make mistakes. And I'm sitting here with like 30 years almost of work experience and make mistakes daily. So and just laugh about it, because that's all you really can do.
But how cool would it be, Paul, if you and I were mistaken for students? Like, can you imagine somebody assuming we're that young?
I would pay money. I would pay money to
Yes.
be mistaken for a student. Yes, that would be nice.
Oh man, Rachel, I appreciate you offering that though, and the vulnerability behind that for sure. But we're talking about employers, and so you have this unique lens into the employer side. You build bridges across a whole bunch of things, which means you understand what employers are looking for. Can you give us a peek behind the curtain about what employers think that makes students stand out, that they make hiring decisions with? Just tell us a little bit about them.
Absolutely. So employers notice who shows up. So the career fairs, career cafe, and other networking events, the Yeggies, the Treks. A professional just a couple weeks ago actually mentioned that students who show up to these are noted when they do look at resumes. So make sure you are going to events, and the faculty of business will always be telling you where they are and when they are. So make sure that you're going because they do notice that, and it's the first step is just showing up.
It's the most important step, just be there. Do the things, right? It's Rachel, I don't know if we've talked too much about this, but at the end of the day, your resume is just only going to speak for itself, and it's starting to have less and less clout, pull, steam, however you want to call it. It is the when you show up and how you just make a name for yourself and talk to people, network, right? When you think of really successful students, the students that you've worked with that have like really done great work, do they have any sort of like character trait, personality trait, anything like that in common, or are there just all different types?
Yeah, I mean, for the most part, I would say they're the keeners, right? So they are doing their research about the company before they apply, before they go on networking visits. They start looking at opportunities early. They ask for help from the CWIL office. They are utilizing their LinkedIn, so they're adding people as soon as they meet them, and they network and they show up for events. So those are the ones that I have seen succeed. So it's not always about your resume, it's not always about your grades, right? It's how you show up and you show out.
Mm. So that sounds like advice already. Well, it is. It's good advice. And you've given some along the way, but I want to offer you an opportunity as we start to kind of head towards a lightning round. Is there any other advice, or would you double down on some of the advice that you have already given for those that are looking to build great relationships?
Yeah, I mean, I just want to double down on the fact that, I mean, the biggest piece of advice is that networking can seem scary, but it's
Mhm.
actually just a conversation. Put your best foot forward and start. The more that you do it, the easier it will become and the more confident you will get.
Mhm. And I wonder, and this might be just like a thought to chew on that has surfaced because you've said that twice now that networking isn't that hard. It's not. It's just meeting another human. But I wonder, as we now watch kind of the kids that grew up through COVID, how that is starting to shift what just meeting another human actually means. And so part of this being we were all privileged to have already had that under our belts kind of before the world shut us down for a long period of time. And my brain is starting to surface that those kids is relative to those of us who are older, but those kids are now getting into stages where they're now being told they have to network, and oh my goodness, they're missing some of those foundational skills that I think actually in fact makes it seem very scary. I don't know what to do with that. It's just a thought. I don't know. Thoughts, Rachel?
Yeah, I mean, I think we all went through it a little bit, and I feel like obviously we built these skills and we've made these connections before COVID, and we kind of learned a bit of the trade. But I think once we were in that lockdown, it was hard to get back up and get out
Mhm.
there. And I know even just for me speaking personally, like I had anxiety over it too, right? It
Mhm.
wasn't easy. And I mean, if I talk about my career path, like I wanted to do something that involved not interacting with people when I
Mm.
graduated high school and I was in university. And I realized when I started working with people that that's what I wanted to do and that I was actually good at it. So
Yeah.
I think that it's all about putting yourself out there, and it's going to be hard at first. Like I completely understand that there are nerves, there's anxiety. It's going to be hard at first, but once you actually start, it's not that hard.
The one thing I just want to add one thing into that is you as a student have access to a bunch of people that have been there and done it and can give little pieces of advice. This is one of those aspects, one of those areas, right? I make a joke, the tens of people that listen. Hopefully the tens of people that listen can say, they told me just to go and ask some questions. And then also, let's say a student sees us in the hallway and says, I saw that podcast that where you said, I get that it could be difficult. Just ask a question. Like we want to help students. Like, and I know Rachel
Mhm.
wants to help students. Like,
Mhm.
contact, how did you find out that you like to talk to people? It's ask the questions of the people who have been there and done it, almost like a mentor or mentee, almost like just an advice giver. But at the end of the day, we're all humans. We all face kind of the things that you're talking about. But I think it's the find people who have done it and just ask them for help. And I think that's a wonderful way to look at it as well, Tiffany.
Yeah. That's good advice. It's probably more a reminder just to myself more than anything is that there are students now entering kind of the student life journey that don't have some of those foundational skills that the rest of us have taken for granted and have taken for granted for other generations too. This is a brand new kind of piece for some generations that I have to remember for sure. Some really good advice for any generation, but those two. All right, Rachel, we could chat forever. We talked about that when we started. We hadn't even pressed record and we were all busy chatting. And so we knew this was going to be a fun chat, but we do have to start to round it up. You ready for a lightning round?
Yeah, let's go.
Let's do it. 3 quick questions, 3 gut answers. What part of your career story has given you the biggest boost?
I would say moving into an employer-facing role. I was way more student-facing, and I decided that I wanted to take that career move, and I think it's the best thing I could have done for myself.
Amazing. What do you wish you'd learned sooner?
I wish I learned that I was an extrovert sooner. I think it would have shaped a lot more of what I would have done in university and what I wanted to do with my career a lot sooner. But I mean, in the end, I still ended up where I needed to be, so I'm happy with that. But yeah.
I love that. And service is just, it's a part of who Paul and I are as people. So we love to end on how is service going to show up for you in the coming week?
Absolutely. Service for me, so I've learned, we call it seva in Hindi, and it basically means service to man is service to God. And so every Sunday I volunteer at my temple and I teach children value-based learning. And so that's one way that I like to serve man, let's say.
I love it. Thank you for that. Beautiful heart. Paul, you're up. What random question do you got?
You know, Rachel, when I think about our conversation that we've had today, one thing really stood out to me, and it was the employer that said, you know, come and talk to me about gardening and come and talk to me about the things that aren't maybe necessarily work related. If a student sees you in the hallway, what is a topic that they can bring to you that you could talk a little bit more about than other things?
Travel. I love traveling. I've been to over 23 countries, adding another one at the end of this year. So I love talking about traveling, adventures, food. Food is a great topic. So I'm a big foodie.
Where are you going the end of this year?
South Korea on my honeymoon, actually. So
Amazing. So in this case, I will not ask if I can stow along in your baggage. It's your honeymoon. You enjoy that. But any other trip, I will ask if there's a Tiffany-sized piece of luggage that I can fit into, but maybe not this one.
for sure.
Oh, man. And what I also hear is that if somebody wants to travel and would like some thoughts on where they should go, you would be a great person to talk to.
Absolutely. I'm your spreadsheet girl too. So I am very type A. I will have a spreadsheet for every trip. So if you ever need an itinerary, you know who to come to.
My God, screw AI. I'm coming to Rachel. I love spreadsheets. I will take a travel spreadsheet any day. Oh, man. Rachel, I think we said at the top, you know, we've connected with you, but not a whole lot. We have a great team, but our team does stuff in all sorts of directions that it means that I don't think we've spent as much time with you as Paul and I would have liked to. I'll speak for Paul on this as well. You are just such a lovely human and an amazing addition to our team. And as you talked about what you do in your role, the vision that I had in my mind was all of these different bridges. Like what a bridge builder and connector that you are. But a bridge builder from person to person, from employer to student, student to student, like just the amount of different people that you connect with such a kind of warm, loving embrace is what it's kind of like a lovely little hug to interact with you, which is such a lovely way to build a relationship. So we are so grateful that you are building relationships out there in the world that connect back to us so that we can kind of be one of those people that walk across your bridges. Thank you so much for building them, and thank you so much for dedicating a lot of your time to students and to us. We appreciate you.
Thank you, Tiffany, and thank you, Paul, for having me. I really appreciated this, and it was a lot of fun.
Good. I'm glad. You're welcome. So we've already booked her to come back. We talked about there's so much that she could chat about. But in this session, I really enjoyed the phrasing, and I'm going to use it. This show up and show out. that showing up, I think a big part of showing up is allowing the world to see parts of you. And that's going to be different from every person. But building a relationships means you need to show up, you need to be there to do the thing and offer a little bit of yourself. And a little bit of yourself usually doesn't mean offer the polished professional part. That's not the part that people connect with. So figuring out what showing up and showing out means to you authentically was just a phrase I think I'm going to hang on to and perhaps use.
Yeah, cool.
You?
For me, I love when people talk about non-work related things with industry professionals. I think if we think about building a friendship, we don't just walk up and be like, what do you do? And like, we talk about the things that people enjoy. We talk about how they spend their personal time. We talk about the things that they really love in life. And I think I have found so much pleasure in getting to know people around their activities and their hobbies, and just asking a question about like what makes that particular hobby or that particular thing interesting to you. You can learn a lot about somebody, based on what they're interested in. And I really truly love that, and I think it should be more of a valuable or more of an impactful part of a networking conversation. So
100%. We are human first.
Yeah.
Human first before anything else. And so can you find the human thing to both share, if you're going to show up and share something human, but ask about somebody else's humanity. Yeah. Cool.
Yeah.
Such a good conversation. They all are, truly. And so next week's going to be an interesting conversation with an MBA student who plays high-level sports. Like, that is another layer to add into things. So how do you juggle that and extracurriculars while you're trying to do everything at a high level? So this student will talk a bit about that, which will be cool. Take care. Thanks for tuning in to the Career Boosters podcast. We hope you had a blast. Yeah, we know that's corny. Catch you next time, and remember to subscribe wherever you enjoy podcasts.